Hello and welcome to the Scarlet Letter channel. I'm Ashrayla and I would like to invite you to come draw with me. What we'll be doing for this series of videos is exploring the elements of art. The first episode, line and shape. The second one, value, form, and space. And of course the third one, color and texture. By the end of these 3 videos, if you are participating, you should be able or should have completed an artwork of your choosing using all of these elements. As with any creative production, you're going to need materials to produce a drawing. Commonly used materials would include Canson Kansas paper, usually used for pastel drawings, but they'll work quite well for the drawings we're going to be creating. 24 count of Prismacolor or praying colored pencils, a drawing board and an easel like the one right behind me, a good quality pencil sharpener, a kneaded rubber eraser, painter's tape, and a ruler. I understand that some of these materials can get a little costly, and if you're just starting out, it can be pretty intimidating. The good news is that you can substitute these for cheaper materials, as a large part of this series is to actually teach you the principles of constructing artwork. So, if you're just starting out, feel free to substitute, say, the Canson paper with commonplace construction paper, any color you'd like. Also, the colored pencils don't necessarily have to be Prismacolor or Prang, especially if you are just starting out. They can be Crayolas. The drawing board and easel, there's a wonderful life hack that I will be showing you in just a minute on how to produce a vertical drawing surface on very little money. You still are going to need a good quality pencil sharpener. You can find one at most retail outlets. If you cannot get a hold of one of those, you can use a paring knife or a box cutter, which is available at both at more places. The paring knife, for example, you can easily get at a dollar store, as is the box cutter. And you can use these to manually sharpen your pencils. In the case of the Crayolas, it'll actually work better than a pencil sharpener, as Crayola leads tend to be a little off-center and can sometimes get eaten up by even the best pencil sharpeners. In place of the kneaded rubber eraser, you can just as easily use one of those soft pink rubber erasers that you see at the office supply store, the dollar store, where the school supplies are kept. As long as it is nice and soft, it should be good. Painter's tape I would still recommend in either case. It's available at the hardware store for very little money, and the reason I need you to have painter's tape is because if you use masking or scotch tape, there's a good chance you could tear your paper, and if you're using the life hack that I'm about to teach for the drawing board, you're going to possibly rip the paint off of your walls. The ruler, it doesn't necessarily have to be a fancy ruler. If you're using the construction paper, the most common size that I have seen for construction paper is 9 inches by 12 inches, well within the dimensions of a standard 12-inch ruler. As promised, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to create a drawing space on your wall using materials you might otherwise throw away. To do this, you're going to need 2 things. Well, 3 technically. The first is going to be tape. While I have masking tape here, I am using my own drawing board. As you can see, it's pretty banged up. So it's not going to matter whether or not the tape actually peels anything off. But you do want painter's tape. Masking tape does sometimes cling to your paper, and in the case of what we're going to do, it may cling to your wall too well as well. The next, you're going to need cardboard from a cereal box, preferably 2 cereal boxes, or a large box of instant mashed potatoes, or even a large box of powdered milk. Just make sure you dust the inside of it off. What you will do is that you will take the printed side of each sheet of cardboard and have them facing in towards each other. If you only have the one, then you will want that piece of cardboard facing up against the wall on the plain side, like this. When you produce your measurements, or when you're getting ready to set up for your wall, you want to have it at a level where your arms will be comfortable reaching it. Once you have decided where you want it, what you're going to do is just tape it to the wall. You want to use tape. You want to tape it either at the corners or at the sides, possibly both. This way, you can draw directly on your wall as a drawing surface and not worry about destroying your wall. Your end result should look similar to this. As mentioned before, by the end of this series, if you're participating, you should have a completed artwork. What we're going to be doing as we explore the elements of art is actually produce them on paper as we go along. This way you can connect application with theory a little easier. Since this episode focuses on line and shape, we're going to get started with some lines and shapes. Specifically the line art for our piece. All a line is nothing more than a mark indicating the distance between one point and another. And although I've already drawn my gutter space for this, I've gone ahead and drawn over it. Shapes happen when lines connect, as in this case. You will see the orange markings here. They've connected to, of course, form a rectangle. When producing your line art, you ideally want a color that will be easily masked unless you intend that line art to be more visible in the finished product. So, good colors for this would include a light peach, yellow. Most commonly, line art is drawn in white. If you are participating and haven't already set up your drawing space, take a minute to do that now. Feel free to pause the video. I'll still be here when you get back. So, for our first drawing, producing line art itself is actually pretty simple. You picture a shape in your mind, any shape at all. Since line and shape are so intimately connected, it's almost impossible to describe them without actually combining them in the same lesson. On your paper, if you are following along and participating, I would like you to start drawing lines into shapes right now. Whatever shape you want. I'm going to draw some peaches, but you can produce just about anything you should desire. Make sure that sets up to the board right. Good. I don't know if you are able to see this. Line art can be very difficult viewing, especially if you're not entirely certain how well the pencil contrasts with paper. I'm going to try and make this a little bit heavier so that it is easier to see. Don't worry if it takes you a minute to come up with whatever shape you would like to draw. The good thing about this is that it doesn't actually have to look at it like anything. Contrary to what you might have been taught in school, shapes are not exclusive to your basic circles, triangles, squares, and rectangles. But they are useful in breaking down an object. Other one. worry if you do not get the line art exactly the way you want it. One of the reasons you draw it in such a light color is that it will eventually be colored over by all of the things, or all of the colors that you're going to be layering on top of this. It's also why you have an eraser. If you don't have the needed eraser, that little soft pink rubber eraser should do just fine, as long as you're gentle. The benefit of the soft pink eraser is, of course, that you don't have to warm it up a bit before it'll cooperate with you fully. Alrighty, I've gone ahead and cleaned up some of the line art that I started with a bit, and I paused the video so you basically wouldn't be stuck watching me play with an eraser for about 15 minutes. What I wanted you to notice is at this point in the line art, the main subject matter is very much completed. You'll notice that in this case the line art intersects, the drawings overlap, and so thus the line art's going to. If you're using a light color, this is okay. And in some ways, it's what you want because it can help you keep track of what you've actually drawn. If you've gone ahead and drawn through the other object, you can get the rest of the shape of the object down without too much fuss. This makes rendering your final drawing a lot easier, as you can lighten the lines that you don't want with your eraser before you begin coloring. Okay, now that we have our subject matter, we're going to go ahead and produce one more line to indicate what it's on. This line, well, I'm going to produce one more line rather. It depends on what you've actually chosen to draw. If you prefer to do an abstract shape, then by all means, do an abstract shape. And as you saw earlier, I'm going to just go ahead and draw the line right through my peaches. And I don't like how that line's turned out, so I'm going to go ahead and get my ruler and try to straighten it. In terms of drawing, a ruler can be your best friend. It can also be your worst enemy, as sometimes you need lines to look more natural. And rulers do not do well with natural lines. If we were drawing, say, a plate, or something other than perhaps maybe what would be a table for the peaches to sit on, we could begin drawing an ellipse. And ellipses are actually a pretty important thing in drawing. Doing them correctly will actually make it easier for you to draw round objects. In this case, it's going to take me a few tries before I get the ellipse to look the way I want it to. What you should ideally be doing is holding your pencil like this. Since I'm facing the camera, I can't do that. But when you draw an ellipse, for any reason, it should be pretty loose. The more practice you get with it, the tighter your ellipses are going to be. Alright, at this point, I myself am done with the line art in question. You'll notice that it's not perfect. It looks really messy and kind of sketchy. With the drawing that you may have started on, that's perfectly okay. Especially if you're still learning. You want your lines kind of messy. You're trying to give the impression of the object on the paper before you fill it in with the color. If you haven't participated in this drawing, one thing you can do is go ahead and find yourself a piece of paper, take a bunch of different drawing implements, and produce whatever squiggly lines and shapes you want. If you'll notice here, because the colored pencil, it wore down on its tip, the places that the line art itself, and let me zoom this in for you, are going to be thicker and thinner at certain spots. Because the eraser, they're going to be lighter and darker too. This will also happen to be the case when you're using different pressures. The harder you press down on your paper, the thicker your lines in the case of colored pencils they're going to be. I know this video seemed very short. I'm very new to this medium, so any criticism I would very much appreciate. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. The next episode, we're going to fill this in with values to give the image form, as well as give the illusion of space. If you've participated as a person who's just doing the line art, thank you for participating.